This is James, and I'm going to do a mock interview with Hannah. Before the interview, I prepared by going over some of the documentation, such as the IEP and the annual social assessment and diagnostic information. And the DEI consideration is that we double check with who is approved for pickup and that the client is only living with the mother. So I will now be just going straight into the open-ended, but first, can you see and hear me, Hannah?
Yes.
Perfect. So I will be just asking you some questions, and then I will probably take a brief pause after each question just to jot down some of the information and notes just to make sure that we have it all on our end. So what is Samantha's date of birth and current age?
Her date of birth is May 2nd, 2018. She is 6 years old.
And just for some information, the first couple questions are just going to be basic information. So that way we can just get more about her. So, how would you describe her language ability? Would you say it's nonverbal, one word utterances, short disfluent sentences, or full fluency?
I would say short, disfluent sentences.
All right. And how long would you say that she's been at that level?
Probably for about 2 years.
All right. Does she attend private, public, homeschool, or no school?
She attends public school.
And how would you describe some of her play skills, such as just what are some of her preferred toys or leisure activities?
She likes to go for walks. She likes to play with Barbies, and other dolls.
Do you play with her, or is that just more of a her thing?
I play with her. I like Barbies too, so we play together.
Oh, that's a
Um,
very nice bonding experience that you guys can have.
yeah, we read books together too for bedtime.
Awesome. And is Samantha taking any medication for their behaviors at all?
No.
Awesome. So that's the end of the first little information. The next couple questions are just going to kind of get a better insight on the behavior. What are the problem behaviors and what do they look like?
Um, so she gets really frustrated and she starts yelling, and then she'll start kicking and hitting when she doesn't like something.
Kicking and
Um,
hitting. And is she kicking and hitting kind of just at anything, more like a flail, or does she have the intent of I'm going to kick and hit this thing?
it's more like a flail.
More like a flail. And what is her single most concerning problem behavior that you have for Samantha?
When she starts hitting and kicking, she knocks stuff off of countertops. She picks up things that could be potentially dangerous and will throw them. Things like that.
All right, so it sounds just like property, like just kind of damaging property, maybe accidentally hurting herself by breaking something and then picking it up.
Yeah.
Perfect. And so I put that as our single most. What are some three other concerning behaviors? Or are there any other behaviors of concern do you have? Or is it just the kicking and screaming and then the, you know, breaking stuff and potentially hurting themselves?
Um, she doesn't communicate when she's upset. She just starts yelling. Um, and screaming and throwing a tantrum. Other than that, I don't think there's any other problem behaviors.
How long do you think the tantrums last, or are they kind of different depending on the day?
It depends on the day, but on average, probably about 10 to 15 minutes.
And now I'm going to ask just kind of about the range of intensity. So, for example, a high range is maybe like it happens a lot. Like, what's the highest of her behavior where it's the highest that you've seen her would be the high range. The medium range is kind of just what you would say on average, and then low range is what you would maybe say is like some precursors where it might start up and then it quickly ends. And if you could just describe what all three of those situations look like, and we're going to start with the high range first.
So high range would be like she throws multiple tantrums a day. Um, she never seems to be calm. She's always upset. She throws things that hurt others, that hurt herself. And she doesn't stop even when she's hurt. Um, and we can't seem to do anything to appease her.
And yeah, that is really difficult, especially when the kids just are hurt and they don't understand why they're hurting and they keep continuing. So I understand that's probably very difficult to deal with. So hopefully we can work on some skills to make it a little more functional and get away with that. That is hopefully the goal that we're gonna do when Samantha joins our clinic. So I do
Yeah,
appreciate you sharing that. Because I just know it's not easy.
yeah, absolutely. Thank you for saying that.
So the moderate, so that would be the high range. What would you say like the average problem behavior looks like?
So the average would be a few times a day is her average, usually in the morning and before bed. Sometimes once in the afternoon, she'll start throwing a tantrum. She'll flail. She'll, hit everything in sight. Doesn't matter who or what it is. That'll probably last 10 minutes each time, but she'll calm down after each one eventually.
Okay. And then what would you say the low range of her behaviors would look like?
Um, just mildly being upset, some small yelling if she's unhappy about something. Maybe one tantrum per day would be like the low range, and it's not a severe tantrum, maybe just 4 or 5 minutes.
So do the different behaviors tend to occur in bursts or clusters? Or are there any type of like precursor of problem behavior? So for example, um, like yelling before throwing something.
Um, they don't tend to occur in clusters or bursts. They're usually after specific events. Um, but she always will start to get frustrated and express that through, grumbling, then eventually yelling, and then eventually screaming, and then eventually it turns into a tantrum.
Okay. Under what conditions or situations are the problem behaviors most likely to occur?
Um, we have a pretty continuous routine each day, so if that routine gets broken, she dislikes that. Um, and she doesn't like doing specific action. She doesn't like putting her shoes on. She doesn't like the feeling of her shoes. So when we have to put on her shoes at the beginning of the day and put on her clothes, um, she doesn't she doesn't like to change clothes. So when we change her into her regular clothes for the school day, and then when we change her into her softer pajamas, she doesn't like that.
Mm. And is that why you think you mostly see those behaviors at the beginning and then the end of the day? It's just kind of getting dressed and then changing.
Yes, I think so. And she doesn't wear the same outfits every day, so she doesn't like that the outfits change every day, change in the routine, but she also doesn't like the sensory issues that come with it.
Mm-hmm. So you already gave great information that getting dressed and putting shoes is it reliably occurs during that activity. Are there any other activities that the behaviors will happen almost every time?
Um, if there's a really loud sudden noise, she doesn't like loud noises. Um, Other than that, it's just kind of change in routine, but no, not any particular activity.
Right. And we are making great work on this interview. Once again, I appreciate your patience while I fill this in. We're
No worries.
probably just a little past the halfway mark. And so you said sensory, and I'll write that down, for what kind of seems to trigger the problem behavior. And it sounded like it was like sensory of like clothes and shoes, and also like sensory of sounds, sudden sounds. Are there any other things that you think would trigger the behavior besides sensory needs?
Aside from sensory issues, just the change in routine,
Mhm.
but that's really it. Sometimes she is, kind of triggered by what I would say like typical child stuff. If, I tell her no, she doesn't like that as
Okay.
much. But that doesn't usually trigger a tantrum that severe as the sensory issues.
And you've mentioned breaking routine and like and kind of interrupting activities. Can you kind of describe what that looks like once the routine is broken? Would you say that's more of a high tantrum, or was it more the moderate behavior? How does that usually look like?
It depends on the day, but for example, if we usually go down the street to a local cafe after school for an afternoon treat. And if for some reason I can't find parking where we usually park and she can see from her car seat that we're parking in a different area, she would, kind of start to get a little bit agitated. And, I try to explain to her, we have to park here today. We're not gonna be able to park in our spot or anything like that. If we don't see the same people that we usually see, if it's a different worker,
Mhm.
she would probably start to have a moderate tantrum, but I can usually appease her once we get the treat and we resume our normal routine.
Okay. And so the problem doesn't really occur when it appears that he or when she won't get her way. Is that correct? Or I believe you said like she'll just start to get upset, but usually it won't escalate unless other stuff happens.
No, she usually doesn't tantrum severely like when she doesn't get her way. It's usually for the other reasons I described.
Mhm. All right. How do you or others respond to the tantrum?
Um, Usually I'll just try and kind of hold her arms down to prevent her from grabbing things off of the table that she could potentially hurt herself or me with. I'll try to just keep her calm and make sure she's safe. She's pretty small, she's only 6, so at this point in her life, I can kind of pick her up and carry her to a safer location like the bedroom where there's pillows and soft objects. Um, but I just try and calm her down and assure her everything will be okay and encourage her to communicate. Um, yeah.
All right. So it sounds like you give just nice like verbal cues to like calm down and help her out. Are there anything else that you do to help when she's engaged in that behavior of tantrum? Or do you just kind of keep using the verbal cues and then just kind of wait for her to calm down?
I kind of just use the verbal cues and wait for her to calm down. I'll just assure her that, the routine will resume, or, once she's in her pajamas, we can read our story together, or once she gets dressed, she can go to school, like try and reassure her.
And what do you and others do to distract her from engaging? So say like she's about to, you're seeing the precursors of the mumbling, grumbling, and starting to yell a little bit. What are some things that you do to distract them?
Usually I'll give her a toy, like one of her favorite Barbies. I keep some in the car, or, some by the front door where her shoes are, or I'll give her a snack or a treat in the afternoon. Um, or I'll give her one of her favorite books. We'll read a book together, but just or turn on one of her favorite shows. We do that
Mm,
sometimes too, just kind of watching something, distracting her a little bit. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
awesome. Well, we only have three more questions. I appreciate your honesty. I know these topics and conversations are not always the easiest, and I appreciate your time. So to begin my final questions is what do you think she is trying to communicate with her tantruming?
I think she's trying to convey that she's frustrated and that she doesn't understand what's going on. And that she doesn't understand why her routine needs to change, or why she can't stay in the same clothes, or why she's not getting what she wants in that moment. I think it's difficult for her to communicate that she's uncomfortable sometimes, or that she doesn't want to be in a certain situation. So I think she's just telling us that she's not happy and that she doesn't understand why she why she can feel unhappy and why it can't be fixed in that moment right away.
Do you think this problem, like the tantrum and the problem behavior, is a form of self-stimulation? And just in case you haven't heard that, do you know what that means? I should ask first of self-stimulation.
No, I do not.
Basically, do you think she would be doing this behavior because it makes her feel good? For example, a lot of kids with on the spectrum do like hand flapping or like to mouth things. And a lot of that's just because it feels good and it kind of stimulates and brings them down. So you think that her tantrums and throwing stuff is part of like she feels good because like it makes her feel good and she kind of gets that sensory input from it.
No, I don't think that she does it to self-stimulate. I think it's that she's upset. I don't think that her throwing the tantrum makes her happy. I don't think she's happy when she's doing it.
And I know we've already talked about you think she's engaging in the problem behavior because of sensory and then also just due to frustration. Is there anything else that you think that causes her to engage in that behavior?
No, I think I pretty much covered it. I think that those are the only reasons.
All right. Well, Hannah, I appreciate your time. Um, I'm now going to share the interview. Um, I'm now going to share the document so you can see it on screen. So if you want to stay and see that, Hannah, you're more than welcome. But you're good to log off now. I really appreciate your help on this assignment.
Thank you. It was great. I really appreciate it.
All right, bye.
Bye.
All right. So I'm going to share. Hopefully this is sharing. Okay. Just want to show that I took the information during that and that it was some very bad typos, but I was trying to just take general notes so that way I have the information to continue for the next part of the assignment. So that is that. I will now upload this and work on the self-reflection. Thank you.